Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to share a card that I made with this Butterfly Swirl Betterpress plate and die set. Now, I've already created a card with this Betterpress plate in the Betterpress system, but because you can foil the Betterpress plates, I wanted to try this Betterpress plate with the Glimmer hot foiling system. So I have a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch hammer mill cardstock. I'm placing my Betterpress plates, man, I have a hard time saying that word, and I'm taping them in place because I want to make sure that they don't shift on me. I don't want a chance that they're going to move as I flop them over, because when you're foiling with the Glimmer hot foil system, you need the plates facing the base with the paper on the top. So by taping it really well, I can make sure that nothing shifts on me. I have my Glimmer Machine warming up, and I'm using the Prism Glimmer Foil. I love this because it's got a silver tone, but it's got some opalescence to it, and I have a soft spot for opalescence. Once I have that all taped up, I'm going to put that on my Glimmer Machine with the plate side down, put my other plates on top of it, and then press the timer button. And once that timer button goes off, I can take it off of the Glimmer Machine and put it through my Big Shot machine. If you've never done hot foiling before, you need the Glimmer Machine for the heat, and you need a die cutting machine for the pressure. So it requires both of them in order for the foiling to work. And typically once I put it through the Big Shot machine, I pull the plate right off. But because I have it taped so well and those plates do get quite hot, I'm going to leave it sit for a couple minutes just for it to cool down a little bit before trying to remove that tape, although it's hard to wait. And then because my Glimmer Machine is warmed up and I don't like to waste foil, I'm going to use the solid hot foil plate as well and foil that solid image at the same time. And I am going to actually use it on this. Once my plates are cool, I'm taking the tape off, and the foiled image is absolutely gorgeous. It's everything I hoped for. I love how much detail you get when you foil with these Betterpress plates. I'm going to carefully remove that tape and the Betterpress plates from that foil, and then I'll put it on top of that solid hot foil plate with the pretty side of the foil facing down, and I'll put another piece of hammer mill cardstock right on top of it, and then my plates. Once that sandwich is all ready, I'll press the timer button, and once that stops beeping or blinking, I will put it through my die cutting machine in order to foil that cardstock. And while that is foiling, I have time to look at this one to see how pretty it is. I think it's absolutely stunning, and I love how it turned out. Once this is off, I can remove that foil from the paper right away, and after admiring it for a few seconds, I will set it aside for later in this project. These backgrounds, while it's great to use the excess foil, I find that they're a little bit too blingy, so I often don't use them as is for a card. I'll do something a little bit different with them usually, just because it's a little bit much. With the coordinating die, I'm going to use a Gina K Masking Magic sheet, and I'm going to create a mask out of it. I want to color these butterflies, but I want to do it with ink pads and blending brushes. I don't want to necessarily have to do it with markers, although you could easily color them, but I wanted to get a nice ink blend from ink pads, and the easiest way to do that without risking getting any ink all over the place is to use a masking sheet. And if you've never used these masking sheets, they're like a big post-it note, so the adhesive sticks really nicely, but when you remove it, you're not going to risk ripping anything or damaging your card front, so they're a perfect solution for this. And these sheets, I will often put the backing right back on, keep it with the die or stamp set that I've used it with, and reuse them several times because they do hold up and last long enough to be able to do that. So now that it's die cut, there is a break in the backing in the center. I'm just going to take half of that backing off, match it up, and then once I've got that matched up and put down, I'll take the other half of the backing off. This is just a little bit easier than trying to match everything while all of that backing is exposed. And while you could lift it up and move it around, it's just slightly easier to only have to deal with half of the adhesive. I'm going to rub that really nicely to make sure that's got some good contact. And because that mask is a little bit bigger than my cardstock piece, it also helps hold it down on my mat. I've got some colors of ink here. I'll put them down in the description, as well as the other supplies that I'm using for this project. And I'm just using some detail blending brushes to blend those together. Because these areas are fairly small, if I were to use regular blending brushes, I'm pretty much inking that entire area. So I wanted something a little bit smaller so that I could have a little bit more control. So I do have to go into the ink pad several times to get everything covered, but it's definitely worth it once you get a beautiful ink blend. I'm using all pastel colors here because I just was in the mood for some pastel colors, and I thought it would look really nice with that Prism foil because of the opalescence to it and the colors that shine from it. You could absolutely, if you wanted, to use some brighter colors as well. These pastel colors, the finished card, I almost think it looks like it could be a wedding card. You could do it as a baby card. The sentiment says "so happy for you," so for obviously happy occasions, I think it would be absolutely great as is. You could change up the sentiment, I think, and use it even as a sympathy card. Obviously you wouldn't use the sentiment that's currently on it right now, but I think it has a lot of potential, this image with these inked butterflies. And the last card I did with this Betterpress plate, I did a secondary image and then I die cut them and used them as dimensional embellishments on the same card. You could easily do that with this as well. If you wanted a little bit more dimension, you could foil a second piece, ink blend the second piece, and die cut it, and then have them as some more dimensional embellishments on this card. This one I decided to just keep nice and simple and kept it very flat, but there's a lot of options when you do this. Once all of those butterflies are ink blended, you can take off that mask and put away the pads. And I love how crisp of an image you get by using this mask. Just be careful taking it off because that bottom part started to rip because of the way that it's die cut. But I can still put that backing on and I can still use this over it again. And the butterfly die cuts that came from inside of it, I'm also going to keep that with my plate and die set to be used in a future project if I need it. And by keeping it with the plate and die set, I'll know exactly where to look for it anytime I use this set. So it just means that I don't have to look for it. The other place I store some of these are with my Masking Magic, the rest of the unused adhesive sheets, but I'll typically only do that for basic shapes like ovals or rectangles, because that, it doesn't really matter which one I'm working on. This particular mask, I'd only use it with this die set, so it just makes sense to keep it with that. So my solid foiled piece, I'm just going to cut that down a little bit. There's a little bit of bare cardstock showing, so I want to make sure that I don't have any of that bare cardstock showing. And I'm trying to center that image. And then once I have the measurements for that, I'm cutting down my ink blended image. I want to use that solid piece as a mat on the front of my card. I'm making it a nice thin mat. I don't want it to be too big and obvious. I want it to be nice and subtle and just kind of enhance the card. The images, the butterfly images that are not foiled, there's only a couple that you see right at the bottom of the card once this is used as a mat, which doesn't bother me, but if that bothers you, I just wanted to mention it just so that that is there and you might want to be aware of that when you're doing your foiling. I was just more concerned with not wasting the foil and having it be used, whereas foiling it and then just setting aside and never using it. I'm now taking a little bit of Stickles and just putting a touch of glitter on the edges of those wings. You could leave it as it is, but I thought it felt a tiny little bit flat and wanted to add just a touch of sparkle. So I'm just putting a little bit there. I'm going to let it dry completely. When it comes to Stickles, it's a personal preference thing. I think less is more, but I absolutely love how this card turned out. Those foiled butterflies are just so pretty. I absolutely love them. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.